Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority meeting for May 6, 2013. To give you an outline of what we're going to be doing this evening, right now at 6 o'clock we're going to have a study session, and then our regular meeting will begin at 7 o'clock. If you wish to speak on any item on our agenda at the special study session or at the regular meeting, please fill out and submit one of those buff cards to the clerk here on my left. Also, I would ask that you put your smartphones, cell phones on vibrate or silent. Madam Clerk, may I have the roll call, please?
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Brzezinski.
Here.
Councilmember Jensen.
Here.
Councilmember McNutt.
Here.
Vice Mayor Leonardis.
Here.
Mayor Spector.
Here. All right, the study session is a discussion and direction on the regulation of single-use carry-out bags and expanded polystyrene. I understand that the staff report is going to be made by Christina Gilmore. And Ms. Gilmore, it's all up to you now.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor and Council. My name is Christina Gilmore. I'm the assistant to the town manager in the town manager's office. We are here this evening to discuss the proposed regulation of single-use carry-out bags and expanded polystyrene, and to receive council direction on the regulation of these two items. I'll begin my presentation with a brief background of this issue within Santa Clara County, then provide an overview of cities within the county who have adopted this regulation. I'll review a draft recommendation of a proposed regulation for the town of Los Gatos, and then close with possible next steps if the council chooses to move forward with this regulation. Which one? In 2009, the Santa Clara County Recycling and Waste Reduction Commission recommended that all jurisdictions within the county establish a single-use carry-out ban. In 2011, the Santa Clara County Cities Association supported this recommendation, and in the same year, San Mateo County began an environmental impact report to examine the potential impacts of regulating the use of plastic bags and to propose an ordinance for regional adoption. The town of Los Gatos and 23 cities in San Mateo and Santa Clara counties participated in this EIR. The final EIR was approved in October of 2012. Also in 2012, the town of Los Gatos adopted a sustainability plan that identified the adoption of an ordinance to ban the use of plastic bags. In 2013, we currently have two pending state legislation bills that are very similar that are moving through the state legislature that seeks a statewide ban of plastic bags. They are AB 158 and SB 405. Both of these bills are currently being heard in committee for the fiscal year 2014 legislative session. And each of these bills seeks to prohibit stores with a specified amount of dollar sales or retail floor space from providing a single-use carry-out bag to customers. Stores would also be required to provide recycled, compostable, or reusable grocery bags to customers. Each of these bills is proposed to be implemented by January 1st, 2015. And after July 1st, 2016, prohibitions would be imposed on convenience food stores, food marts, and certain other specified stores. Cities within Santa Clara County who have adopted a single-use bag ordinance include the city of Palo Alto, which initially banned plastic bags in 2009, and they are currently in the process of revising their ordinance for this year. The city of San Jose, whose ordinance went into effect in January 2012. The City of Mountain View's ordinance recently just went into effect on April 22nd of this year. The City of Sunnyvale's ordinance also went into effect in March of this year. And the City of Cupertino's ordinance will be taking effect later this year in October. And the City of Campbell is currently their council will be considering their ordinance that will be going up for adoption this spring. The following recommendation for a proposed single-use bag ordinance is based on the model ordinance approved within the San Mateo County EIR. The provisions of this model ordinance include taking effect on January 1st, 2014, prohibiting the free distribution of single-use carryout paper and plastic bags, requiring retail establishments to charge customers 10 cents for recycled paper bags and reusable bags until December 31st of 2014, and then increasing the minimum charge to 25 cents per paper bag after January 1st, 2015. Customers participating in the supplemental food program would be exempt from having to pay these charges, and the retailers would be allowed to provide protective plastic bags without handles intended to segregate produce, raw meat, prescription drugs for their customers at no cost. Should the town council choose to move ahead with this proposed ordinance, staff would implement a public outreach plan that would involve working with the Los Gatos Chamber of Commerce, posting information on our town's website, hosting informational stakeholder meetings with the retailers and residents, and we would return to the council in October and November for an ordinance introduction and adoption. Staff is also proposing within the staff report that to bring forward a recommendation to the council later within the fiscal year 13-14 for an expanded polystyrene ordinance, and this ordinance would be subsequent to the adoption and implementation of a single-use carryout bag ordinance. This concludes my presentation, and I'm available for questions. Thank you.
All right, we'll begin with staff, council questions of staff. Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. Question for staff would be, is this proposed ordinance applicable to retailers such as clothing retailers, drugstores, fast food places, etc.?
Yes.
I have one more question.
Certainly.
And a follow-up, or another question would be, with Assembly Bills 158 and SB 405, are they planning on charging for single-use bags in those bills? Do you know if that is part of their legislation on the state level?
I believe it's still up in the air. They're still going through committee, and there's still some substantial revision to both of those bills. I did become aware of a third bill this afternoon, SB 700, which is proposing that the charge for any plastic bags would be going into a general fund that would be funneled back to local jurisdictions through the California Waste and Recycling. So I think there's still a considerable amount of work that is being done on both the AB 158 and the SB 405, and it still remains to be seen exactly if a bag fee will be part of either one of those two bills.
Ms.
Thank you.
McNett.
Thank you, Mayor. I have several questions. Should I just do them all at once?
Yes, please.
Okay, thank you. So just to clarify the answer that you just gave, because that was one of my questions, and I have some questions and concerns about the charges for paper bags. So do you know, the Vice Mayor was asking about single-use bags, but are you saying that they also are still up in the air about charging for paper bags, not the plastic bags?
Yes, my understanding is that the charge from both of the state bills are still up in the air, and they're currently going through committee. The proposed ordinance that we have in our staff report, the charge, the 10 cent and the 25 cent charge, would be for the retailers to recoup their cost for providing bags that meet the standards of the ordinance that are more post-consumer recycled content. So it would help the retailers recoup their cost for providing those types of bags to their customers.
So that, I'll circle back. That kind of leads into a next question, was where does that money go? So are you saying it stays with the retailer just as an extra revenue stream?
Correct. As the model ordinance is currently written, any fees charged for reusable bags would stay with the retailer for the local jurisdictions.
Okay. And do you know if are all of the other ordinances in the county that were passed by the other cities, do they also include charges for the paper bags?
Yes.
Okay. And on the polystyrene, is it complicated to do that ordinance and that's why it's subsequent? Or is there a reason why it needs to be 1-2 punch? Or is it something that if council wanted, that they could be done concurrently?
It's really a workload issue within the staff. I will check with Christina. Is there a model ordinance yet for the polystyrene or not?
Not that I'm aware of. The city of Cupertino is currently, I believe, going to be embarking on an EIR for the polystyrene, and so we will definitely see if we can piggyback with them similar to what the plastic bags EIR.
And perhaps my final question is somewhere it mentions that on page 3 of the staff reports that some retail establishments would be exempt from the ordinance. This is under the environmental impact report up at the top. Could you give me an example of the types of businesses that would be exempt?
Sorry.
That would be part of the discussion with the public outreach process, as well as we meet out with businesses to present what types of businesses have been exempted in other communities, to then explore what is appropriate here in any ordinance that would come back to the council for action. We
So-
can certainly provide that information separately of what's been studied elsewhere.
So in the EIR, the assumption was that there would be 5% of plastic bags would still be used so we wouldn't be, those weren't specified in the EIR where we have to stay within that, or we mess up the EIR, we could have some flexibility, or we don't know at this particular point. It's up in the first paragraph.
I believe the 5%, what they're referring to is for the businesses that would use plastic bags for food items, for pharmacies, things like that. So there would be some businesses that would still be able to use certain types of plastic bags. And so that's what the EIR
So you're saying the
refers to.
exempt from the ordinance refers to plastic bags and not to retail establishments? So they put the phrase in the wrong place, for clarity.
And it's the state legislation that's exempting retailers of certain size or square footage.
Okay, got it. That is now my final question.
Thank you. Other questions? Ms. Jensen?
Given that there's a model ordinance existing, I was just wondering what the staff's timetable would be for presenting an ordinance through the process such that if council recommended, it could actually be considered for adoption to take effect by January 2014.
Our recommended course of action would be to begin public outreach if the council so directs us to move forward with this pretty much immediately. I've already been having discussions with the Chamber of Commerce, so we would begin to reach out to the retailers within the town of Los Gatos to set up some informational meetings and to understand what their concerns are and working through the ordinance with them. So we would expect to be able to come back in October for an ordinance introduction and November for an ordinance adoption for implementation in January of 2014.
Ms. Jensen?
Just to follow up, so based upon your answer, I'm assuming that staff would just be presenting the council with the model ordinance. Am I correct? There's no writing involved.
Correct. We would be presenting the council with the model ordinance as well as feedback that we've received from the retail establishments within the town.
Mr. Brzezinski?
Thank you, Madam Mayor. A couple of questions. We attached ourselves to the San Mateo County EIR process because I believe we felt that we wanted to have cover, in effect, when this was moving forward. And when we talk now about the polystyrene issue, that wasn't included in the San Mateo EIR in any way, shape, or form at this point.
That is correct.
So you say Campbell is interested in possibly doing
City of Cupertino is exploring doing an EIR for EPS. My understanding that City of San Jose has begun their own process, so we would need to explore what the City of San Jose has done as well as some of the other West Valley cities to see if there's any way that we can combine our resources to move forward with a model ordinance for EPS.
All right, because my preference would be that we not get ourselves ahead of the EIR process in relationship to that. In terms of the 6 cities that you noted have already created single bag ordinances, you said Palo Alto is currently revising theirs.
Correct.
I know they jumped in first. What's the direction they're taking in the revise, since they were the ones who probably have had the most experience with this?
I don't have specific information on what their revisions are going to include at this time.
Okay, I think it would be good to find that out, because there are some complex issues related to some of the specifics. We did get a notice from one of our merchants on North Santa Cruz talking about her use and some of the consequences of this applying as a blanket ordinance.
Further questions? I'll go to Mr. Larson. Are you responding to
Just
Mr. Brzezinski's question?
Correct.
Okay.
And just a quick follow-up, this was scheduled as a study session to see if there was council majority for direction to do the more extensive research that's needed in terms of how Palo Alto is deviating from the model ordinance and what other changes that we can learn from other jurisdictions, as well as discussing with our community. We didn't want to embark on that substantial workload without direction from the council that they were interested in this product.
Understood.
Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. If we deviate from the proposed ordinance, does that mean we have to do a new EIR or an individual EIR for our community?
Yes, it would be recommended that we would explore doing an addendum EIR. My understanding is that several cities, such as Cupertino, who just passed their ordinance, did try to deviate slightly from the model ordinance, and a few lobbyists came after them with a pending lawsuit. So I think that for the council to consider that, we would need to be sure that we wanted to move forward with an addendum and that we felt that any changes to the model ordinance were defensible.
With regard to San Mateo's EIR, does that one have a sunset clause? In other words, is it good for X amount of time and then it's no longer valid?
My understanding is that the San Mateo County ordinance will be in place for perpetuity. It's doesn't have a sunset as of I know now.
Okay, not the ordinance, but the EIR.
Oh, I'm so sorry. The EIR. You know, I don't have that information on the EIR. I can follow up and find out for you.
All right. And then, do you know whether or not San Mateo's EIR study assumed that there would be charges for bags, be they plastic or paper?
Yes, the San Mateo County EIR did assume charges of 10 cents and 25 cents.
Because Mr. Larson and I go to the West Valley Mayor Managers, and this was a topic that was discussed, I was under the impression that Cupertino was looking to see what San Jose was doing on its polystyrene EIR. And is that your understanding also, or do you know?
That is my understanding, yes.
Further questions? All right, now, if anybody wants to speak to us on this issue, if you would please give a card to the clerk. Just go up to the mic and stand there until I call your name, so that we can move the process along. If you intend to speak on this issue, please fill out one of these cards and give it to the clerk. Chris Wiley.
Yes, just real quick, it's more of a learning thing. So if I'm a shop, let's say that is a restaurant. Let's start with a restaurant, and I have food to go. The big bag, is that out?
Chris, right now, just talk to us.
Okay,
And
I'm sorry, is that out? The other thing is that if I'm, let's say, a sandwich shop, and I make a sandwich, I throw it in a bag, is that bag still going to be allowed? The other thing is, you said fast food. Does that mean McDonald's can't have a bag? And if a restaurant now or any retailer wants to start charging for bags now, is it their prerogative if they want to charge 10 cents, 25 cents for a bag? Is that okay?
Thank you. Does anyone else wish to address us? Again, if you are, just get these cards into the clerk so we can keep moving it along. And if questions are raised, staff may be able to address them later on in the process. The next speaker is Karen Barker.
I'm Karen Barker, current manager of the Butter Paddle, 33 North Santa Cruz. We are a small business, but what I heard was that you would be making the decision by October, November to go into effect maybe the 1st of January. We order our supplies 6 months to a year at a time, and so we need as much lead time as possible to use up the supplies that we have in plastic bags and to order or find a source of a reasonable paper bag type. I would just hope that you would keep us involved and informed if you're going to go forward with those timelines.
Can I ask a question?
Thank you.
Madam Mayor? Can I
Yes,
ask a
Mr.
question of the
Brzezinski.
speaker?
Ms. Barker.
Thank you, Ms. Barker. My question is, the way we've envisioned this, would this be problematic for your business, excluding this issue of the pre-order and the time frame, if we're able to work appropriately within that realm? Would you see this as having an impact on your small business?
No, I don't think it would be a problem, just so we have some time to, like I say, use up the year's supply that we have and time to replace it with paper, because we use the lightweight disposable one-use plastic bags.
All right, thank you.
Okay?
And before you leave, I was actually going to ask that question too. I know that there are some places, fast food places, that are already using either paper or what do you call it, recyclable plastic, but you are using single use.
Probably I would consider it a single use. It's a dark magenta color, not the white grocery bag one, but it is plastic and it's really considered a single use. We also have paper handled bags, but they're expensive, more gift line rather than just we wouldn't put a $5 item in a 50 or 75 cent bag.
All right, thank you. And I'm going to ask staff, since we do have your name and address here, to make sure that any outreach includes Ms. Barker. Brad Hunt, please.
Good evening. My name is Brad Hunt. I'm with Save Our Shores. We're a small nonprofit located in Santa Cruz, and we've been working on this issue for a couple years now, so it's good to see that you're finally bringing it to the agenda for the council to hear. I just wanted to mention that in San Mateo County, there were an overwhelming number of cities that this ban went into effective on April 22nd, like Belmont, Brisbane, Burlingame, Colma, Daly City, Foster City, Half Moon Bay, Menlo Park, Pacifica, Portola Valley, San Bruno. So that's all that just went into effect on Earth Day this year. So it's good to see that you're bringing this for the council, and we hope that you're going to bring it to the agenda and approve it. 10 cents is a good start. 25 cents is better. Capitola went straight to 25 cents because they saw some of the troubles the city of Monterey was having. They started with 10 cents. They went to 25 cents. Some of the residents were confused about what was going on. So now they're in a discussion about why do we go to 25 cents? Why can't we keep it at 10? So it might be something to consider just to go straight for 25, so you avoid some of that chaos that Monterey is now dealing with. Thanks.
Thank you. All right, this is my last card. William Bjorg. Hi.
Yes, I'm a resident of Los Gatos, and I'm not a shopkeeper or anything like that, but I'd say as a resident, I'm really, really happy that the council is going through with this and joining all the other cities in up the peninsula and on the coast and hopefully statewide, because I think it's just so important for the environment. And I mean, with the giant floating sea of bags out there, I think it's just really great that we look for other solutions and that we really follow through with this. So I appreciate it. Thanks.
Thank you. Anyone else want to address us? I have no more cards. Seeing no one, I will close the public input portion of this special meeting. And first of all, look to staff to see if there's anything they want to add before we go to the council.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I want to make clear that the model ordinance does provide provisions for certain types of reusable bags but to be used by retailers. So we will be including this in our outreach so that retailers will be aware of what types of reusable bags can be purchased by them and provided to their customers. In particular, for plastic bags, the model ordinance does allow plastic bags that are at least 2.25 millimeters thick and specifically designed and manufactured for multiple reuse. And piggybacking on what the County of San Mateo has done with their ordinance and adoption, they have provided a list of suppliers throughout the state that we will also be making available to all of our retailers. So that's for plastic bags as well as for paper bags, and the paper bag criteria is that it needs to be 100% recyclable. So for anybody in the room who is a retailer and is concerned about this ordinance moving forward, we will be make sure that in a part of our outreach that we make all of these this information known and that retailers are aware of where they can purchase these materials.
Let me follow up on what you just said then. Given the fact that the outreach is going to be starting at some time in the not-too-distant future and then going on for some time, is this information to which you just made reference, can that be made public even though we're not at the end of our process?
Absolutely, it can. It just is a matter of just us reformatting the information and posting it on our town website so that's available to the public.
Thank you. All right, other questions? Then Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I was curious on the answer to Ms. Wiley's question. So if you go to McDonald's in San Jose, do you have to bring your own bag?
No. So food establishments will be part of this ordinance, but as long as they meet the minimum criteria that's outlined in the ordinance for reusable plastic bags, as I mentioned, 2.25 millimeters thick, or providing other 100% recyclable bags or cloth bags, they will be able to hand out bags or to provide bags to their customers for purchase. And as far as a McDonald's type of a chain, the major retailers, I'm not quite sure how they would handle that, if they would charge that to the customer's bill or how that would work. We haven't really had much outreach with much of the national retailers. That is something that we hope to get more information from as we move forward through this process, if possible.
Ms. McNutt?
And I'm sorry, a follow-up question. Do you know, are the retailers required to say to a customer, because I have to admit, I actually bought something outside of town at Christmas. I was at Nordstrom. I took my own bag, but it was too small once they put it in the bag. So they said, do you want to spend 10, 20 cents or something? I was like, yeah, for sure. But are they required to ask permission to add that to their bill before they charge a customer for a bag?
I would assume that we would make that part of the ordinance, but just from personal experience, I live in the city of San Jose. As I've shopped and I haven't had a bag, they have asked me if I would like to purchase a bag, and I've said yes. I haven't asked how much it was, but they do ask you prior to charging you. So we would make sure that was written in our ordinance if that's what the council desired.
And I'm assuming then that the credit that I get at the grocery store when I bring my own bags will stop because they won't be
I believe
saving,
that depends on the retailer. So any bag credit that a retailer would implement would be based on a retailer-to-retailer basis. So
20 cents is really important to me when I go grocery shopping. So,
Mr. Larson.
In my experience has been the same in that when I've shopped in jurisdictions with this regulation, you're asked if you want a bag and to pay the charge. I'm not sure if other ordinances require that solicitation and request, or if it's just a good customer service model in practice of the retailer, so you don't have customers saying, what is this charge, when they're not prepared for it. There was another question that came up, and we have received phone calls regarding current retailers in town that are charging for bags. Where we've heard that, it's part of a regional chain, and we don't know of anything that prohibits a retailer now from charging its customers for a bag if they so choose to do so. And that may indeed be happening either as company policy or just as staff moves from store to store. And if they worked in a San Jose store and charge for the bag and they're subbing as a teller here and they charge for the bag, we don't know how it's occurring, but we don't know of anything that prohibits current retailers from charging for bags. I will point out one difference between the ordinance. When you look at page 2 of the staff report, what was originally proposed by the Regional Waste Commission and supported by the Cities Association did exempt restaurants and fast food establishments, but that was back in 2009 and 2011, and I believe the EIR included those.
Right, and then it's talking from, personal experience rather than, science. In other jurisdictions, I have had retailers ask if I wanted to pay the extra 10 cents. I have had retailers provide me with a bag if I wanted it and not charge me. And I think that places like McDonald's, I think that they may, I'm not positive, I think they may very well have standardized their plastic and paper bags to comply with requirements. So life experience. I am looking for, if there's no further discussion, I am looking for a motion, and staff, are you directing us to page 1 of the staff report or to something else on your presentation?
That is correct.
Which staff, page 1 of the staff
Page
report?
1, yes.
Okay. So, Ms. McNutt.
You want an actual motion rather than consensus discussion tonight, or?
Let's do a motion, makes it cleaner.
Okay, well, I will make a motion then to authorize staff to draft and present the ordinance for regulation of single-use carryout bags, and to very quickly move into the polystyrene as soon as possible, with 2 annotations on that, and that is that I think we should look very closely about possibly extending the start time based on our comment tonight, because I know we do have a lot of small independent retailers where using up their inventory is a big expense for them. And so it may be that we want to not have a January 1 start date. It might be June 30th or Earth Day of next year or whatever. So we could look at that. And then also I would like us to look at, so this is all still part of the motion, the cost of the paper bag to perhaps get it as close as possible to the actual cost to the retailer, since it's really, I know it's designed as a, you've got your carrot and stick thing going on here to try to change behavior, but if we can keep it closer to the 10 cents for a while, so that it's closer to the actual cost of the bag for the retailer, I think it would be a more gentle entry for our residents and our visitors into this whole new world.
I'll second that.
All right, we have a long motion, we have a short second.
And could we have just a minute of further discussion on this?
Oh, we will. I just wanted to, the motion is from line items 1 and 2 under recommendation of our staff report, with an extension, with editors, that we look to an extended start time in order to be aware of the inventory issue, and also to make the cost of the paper bag as close to cost recovery as possible. Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. In looking at the language regarding polystyrene, I'm understanding that our motion is really focused on reusable bags, not polystyrene at this time. Is that correct, maker of the motion?
The motion actually includes paragraph 2, which asks staff to look into polystyrene, and the maker of the motion, well, I don't want to put words in her mouth, but said to move along on that issue.
That's correct, and there may be reasons why it can't move along any faster than that because of the EIR situation, but
Right.
but to keep it on a fast track because it isn't.
Yeah, and
significant
I
problem.
think I understood that in the motion, that's why I seconded it, but I just want to caution us that we don't want to get in front of the EIR. And when you look at the language of the RWRC, they were recommending a decision to adopt an ordinance by July 1st, 2013, which I don't think we're going to be able to do related to polystyrene without the EIR process having been completed. So that would be the one thing that I would ask that the staff consider as we move forward here, that the RWRC's timeframes for polystyrene are not included, obviously, or do not include the EIR process at this point. And I am very much in favor of attacking both issues, but want to caution us about the timing on the polystyrene thing as related to the EIR.
Further discussion? Ms. Jensen?
I had a question of staff before I vote, if I may. I had the impression, Ms. Gilmore, during your presentation that the January 2014 date came from something other than the town's direction. And if I'm wrong about that, that's great. But if I'm right about that, then I'm concerned about the current motion.
The January 2014 date was a suggestion by staff based on council's interest in moving forward with this ordinance. So if the council gives direction to push it out later into 2014, staff is agreeable to do that.
Let me follow up with that then. What we're looking for now, what the council would be directing staff to do, is to come back to us after you've done your outreach, and then you'll be coming back to us. And I think you talked about returning to us in October or November. It would seem to me, and correct me if I'm wrong, that whatever happens when you return to us will establish what happens next and when. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Mr. Leonardis, I think that I saw your hand up.
And you just answered my question, so thank you.
Mr. Larson.
Yes, I did want to clarify that if the EIR that was done that we're piggybacking on and using did specify the costs of 10 cents and 25 cents, changes to either of those numbers might require an addendum to the EIR. And the timeline we've given you with outreach, I doubt if that includes an addendum to the EIR for October, November. So we'll factor that in, and if we can do the outreach more quickly with the local business community to come back to you earlier, we would certainly do that, but we want to be respectful of the summer holiday months.
Question to follow up on what you just said. I'm assuming that the outreach will be to the community, which includes the business community.
Fair correction.
Okay. Further discussion? See none, we have a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously, and thanks staff for the presentation. And we will be we will be taking a break until 7 o'clock when our regular meeting begins. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the May 6, 2013 Town of Los Gatos Joint Town Council Parking Authority meeting. We're going to ask the clerk to do a roll call.
Thank you and good evening. Councilmember Joe Przinski.
Here.
Councilmember Diane McNutt.
Here?
Councilmember Marcia Jensen.
Here.
Vice Mayor Steve Leonardis.
Here.
Mayor and Chair Barbara Spector.
Here. I would ask that you silence or put on vibrate your cell phones, smartphones, and also if you intend to speak to us on verbal communications or on any matter on our agenda, fill out one of these cards and give it to the clerk over here to my left. Now, those of you who are veterans of our council meetings, either by being here or listening to us, you know that we always have a super student lead us in the flag salute. So tonight I'm going to ask Joseph Sandoval to come up here and join me. I'm going to have him come up here and stand so you can look at the special guy who goes along with what I'm going to tell you. Joseph Sandoval is a fifth grader at Nodden, am I getting it right? Yeah. Nodden Elementary. He's a member of the student leadership team. He serves as spirit officer. He is in advanced math course at Nodden and participates in the education program for gifted youth, EPGY. His favorite subjects are math, science, and social studies. He loves to read, and his favorite author is Rick Riordan. He's best known for his Percy Jackson and the Olympian series. Joseph is training to be an altar server at St. Mary's Church. He's a volunteer newspaper delivery boy in the Bellwood area. He plays AAA baseball with the Union Little League. He's a catcher. He plays Pop Warner football and likes to swim. When he grows up even more, he wants to be an engineer. Let's give a round of applause. So if you'd please stand, and while he leads us in the flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Hold on. Wait, Joseph, here's your gift. Thank you. Another round of applause. Now that he's sat down, I'm going to ask Todd Capurso to join me up here at the front. We have a proclamation which Todd is going to be receiving tonight for Parks and Public Works. I'm going to give him the snazzy one to hold while I read the one that I can see. Whereas National Public Works Week was instituted as a public education campaign by the American Public Works Association in 1960 and calls attention to the importance of public works in the community life, and whereas public works services provided in Los Gatos are an integral part of our citizens' everyday lives, and the health, safety, and comfort of Los Gatos greatly depends upon these facilities and services, and whereas this year's theme is Because of Public Works, as we celebrate the efforts and skill of public work employees in planning, designing, constructing, and maintaining the quality and condition of these facilities, and whereas the Town Council of the Town of Los Gatos urges its citizens to join communities throughout the state and the nation in recognizing the substantial contributions and public works professionals make to the communities they serve. Now, therefore, be it resolved, I, Barbara Spector, by virtue of the authority vested in me as mayor of the town of Los Gatos, do deem it appropriate and do hereby proclaim the week of May 19th through 25th, 2013, as National Public Works Week within the town of Los Gatos, and call upon all citizens, civic leaders, and civic organizations to acquaint themselves with the issues involved in providing our public works and recognize the contributions of which public works professionals make every day to ensure our health, safety, comfort, and quality of life. Thank you and congratulations.
I would like to thank the mayor and the council for this proclamation, and this is my opportunity once a year to make sure that we as staff always recognize our fine staff in Public Works that maintains the infrastructure throughout town. And by infrastructure, we mean all of the streets and roads throughout town, our parks, our facilities, and our engineers and inspectors who have designed and built many of the fine facilities that we have in town. So over the last year, we've constructed and opened the town's new library. We've opened the new sports park, and most recently we've reopened the pageant grounds directly behind the Civic Center. So those are big projects that we're all proud to work on. But on a day-to-day basis, this is also the same staff, the same group of men and women that maintain your streets, your parks, and your facilities. And so we are very thankful for all the work that they put forward. In keeping with the theme of National Public Works Week, the 19th through the 25th, I would like to point out to all of you that down at 41 Miles Avenue at the town's courtyard, we will have an open house on Wednesday, May 22nd from 9 a.m. to noon. And during that time, we invite many of the local elementary schools down for tours. But we also note that the yard is also open to the general public for tours, and we invite you all to come on down and take a look at some of the equipment we use, the facilities that we maintain, and meet the staff that takes care of all the infrastructure throughout the town. So once again, thank you very much.
Yet another service by Parks and Public Works.
Ms. Prop, closed session report.
Thank you, Mayor, council members, members of the public. The council met in closed session this evening as duly noticed on the agenda. They took no action, and there's nothing to report out this evening.
I think that you heard my prior request, but if you intend to speak on any item on our agenda, please submit one of these buff cards to the clerk over here. We now go to council, town manager matters. First, council matters. Any council member want to report? Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'm not reporting out on any meetings, but I do want to bring up a subject that I've brought up before, and we've had some action on it. But we have tried to set some public deadlines, some deadlines for public comment coming into council so that there is time enough for us to receive them prior to well, first of all, that we receive them prior to the meeting and we receive them enough time. I was noticing at a planning commission meeting recently, they had something like 50 pages of desk item, and they actually had to take a break in the meeting in order to read that. Since we have some interesting agenda items coming forward in the next few weeks, I wonder if we could step up our efforts of publicizing that time deadline for the public so they know that in order to have council or planning commission receive it ahead of time so we have time to read it, that it needs to be submitted by 3. Maybe we could put it on every agenda. We could put it on the homepage of the town website and really try to emphasize that, because it's really sad to receive something when I get home at night that it would have been nice to have read prior to the meeting.
Thank you. And Mr. Larson, did you want to report on that also?
We are working on a proposal to council to accelerate the deadlines to ensure that the council has ample opportunity to review all submissions before the council meeting. That is not before you tonight, however, so no action can be taken on that. We can shoot to have that for the meeting on the 20th as an action item. That would not affect, obviously, anything on the 20th.
All right, anyone else want to? Mr. Brzezinski.
Yes, thank you, Madam Mayor. In my role as chair of VTA, Board of Directors, I was invited with other electeds to participate in a forum for discussion of transportation options for seniors that took place yesterday in Saratoga at the Jewish Synagogue on Prospect. And it was a very lively discussion sponsored by the political action group PACT, which is People Acting in Community Together. And it was very worthwhile and very engaging. And I do believe that there were some good recommendations that derived from that discussion.
Thank you. Anyone else? Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. I serve on the West Valley Solid Waste Advisory Committee, and the contract with West Valley Collection and Recycling is going to be maturing in February of 2014, and they wanted to do a community outreach meeting to discuss potential changes coming up with the contract as well as the renewal of the existing contract. So I wanted to know if we can possibly schedule an outreach meeting here in Los Gatos, and I would like to refer to you on your direction on that.
Thank you. I would suggest that, Mr. Manager, that you and I discuss this issue and come up and make an announcement after we've met.
Sure.
Anything further? All right, seeing nothing, Manager matters.
Yes, Madam Mayor, members of the council, several items. First, we do have 5 desk items before you tonight, and for the clarification to the public. The first one is for item 1B on your agenda, which is the minutes, and it includes corrections and clarifications regarding the St. Mary's discussion and actions. The second desk item is for item number 3, which is the contract amendment for the AHA's environmental review, and we provide additional information in response to a council inquiry regarding the source and timing of funds for that contract. The third desk item is for agenda item number 4, which pertains to EV charging stations, and it provides a number of responses to council inquiries. The next desk item is for agenda item number 5, which is a grant application to the Water District, and again, we're responding to council inquiries. And the last desk item was for agenda item number 8, pertaining to the pavement rehabilitation program contract, and it is providing 14 letters of support from residents for pedestrian improvements on Oka Road. And I will highlight those letters were received prior to 3 p.m., which is the deadline. Any letters received after that have not been included in the desk item. The couple additional items is we are recruiting for new members for both the Youth Commission and the Transportation and Parking Commission, and those applications are due back to the town by May 22nd. Next, the Police Department and Police Foundation are hosting an open house at the AAA offices on May 15th from 3 to 6 p.m. And last, I want to introduce the council to a staff member, Melissa Wang, Town Assistant Engineer. Melissa could stand up, who is our visiting talent to the executive team and the council this month. And we also need to say farewell. This is the last meeting that Clerk Administrator and Deputy Town Attorney Mazarine Vicaria will be with us as she goes off to the private sector to practice law. And I would like to ask the council to join with me in thanking Mazarine for her years of service.
Thank you. Our next item is our consent calendar, and because I see some cards here, I will explain what we do. We have 10 items on our consent calendar, and if anyone from the council or the community pulls any item from the consent calendar, I'm going to have it heard in its normal order, and all those items that are not pulled from the consent calendar will be approved in one motion. So I'm going to start with council. Does any member of council wish to pull any item from the consent calendar? Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. I'd like to pull agenda item 4 on electric vehicle charging station and number 5 on the Water District grant application.
All right, and when we get to those, I will be asking Ms. McNutt or whoever pulls an item to just briefly tell me why they are pulling it. Anybody else from the council want to pull anything from the consent calendar? All right. Does
I'm sorry, Madam Mayor. I think you were looking at me because I had my hand up, but Ms. McNutt addressed the agenda item that I had the question about.
All right. Does anybody from the audience wish to pull anything from the consent calendar? All right. We have Lee Quintana. Just raise your hand. Are you pulling number 7? Anyone else pulling an item from the consent calendar? Is there a Karen Russell here? Are you pulling item number 8 from the consent calendar? Okay. Ms. Russell, I'm going to have to ask you to come up here. I just want to make sure that I'm doing what it is you expect me to do.
I'm for it, but I heard someone else saying, what does pulling mean? I don't want to.
All right. All of the items on the consent calendar, including item number 8, are going to be approved unless someone pulls them from the consent calendar. Do you want to pull it from the consent calendar?
No.
All right. So then I will skip that. We are not to verbal communications yet. All right. If the person in the back would please come forward. Please give us your name and let me know, are you pulling an item from the consent calendar?
I guess so. The name is Ellie Stern, and I'm here in regard to the landscape, item 9.
All right, I have you here, Ellie Stern, and so do you want to pull that from the consent calendar?
Well,
do you want to discuss it tonight?
I want to discuss
All right.
it.
You are pulling it from the consent calendar. So we have item 9 pulled from the consent calendar by Ellie Stern.
Okay, thank you.
Anybody else want to pull an item from the consent calendar? So far, we have 4 and 5 pulled by Ms. McNutt, 7 pulled by Ms. Quintana, and 9 pulled by Ms. Stern. Anybody else pulling an item from the consent calendar? Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. I will not be pulling an item, but I just wanted to let the public know I'll be abstaining my vote on item 2.
All right. So, having got through that, we now have the following items on our remaining on our consent calendar: 1, 2, 3, 6, 8, and 10. Is that correct, Mr. Larson? Good. Do we have a motion on those? Ms. Jensen.
I'll move approval of the existing consent calendar as just summarized by the mayor.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Discussion. Ms. Prop.
And I need a point of clarification from Vice Mayor Leonardis if number 2 is a recusal or an abstention.
Thank you, Attorney. I was not part of the public hearing because I had to recuse myself from the hearing, so I don't know if an abstention is appropriate or a recusal.
It's my recollection that you recused yourself for a legal obligation not to participate in that item when it first came to hearing, given your proximity of property near there.
Yes, so for the purpose of the consent calendar this evening, should I just abstain my vote, or should I, yes?
Your recusal on the record is adequate.
Okay, thank you.
All right, further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. All right, now let's keep these in order. The first item we will be hearing, which has been pulled from the consent calendar, is Agenda Item 4, Electric Vehicle Charging Stations, Parking Restrictions, Authorized Restricted Parking in parking stalls adjacent to electric vehicle charging stations. The way I'm going to proceed on this and all the other ones, I will ask the individual who pulled the matter to give us his or her reason. I will ask staff to address the matter at that point, and then we will go on. Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to quickly summarize, this item would set aside the parking spaces that are adjacent to electric vehicle charging stations for exclusive use of electric vehicles. My uncomfortableness with this, that I just wanted to see if everyone else is fine with it and really have thought it through, is the length of time. And that's why I asked these series of questions that we got in the desk item. So to have 4, and I'm mostly concerned about the 4 spaces that are in the prime downtown lots, to tie them up for 3.5, 6 hours per car, I just am uncomfortable with that when we need the turnover. And I thought the whole concept of making the charging station available in our downtown retail area was to provide incentive and confidence to electric vehicle owners that they can come to Los Gatos, they wouldn't be stranded and run out of juice, that they'd be able to plug in while they're shopping or dining or going to a movie when the theater's back open. So again, I'm just a little uncomfortable with setting aside that number of spaces for very long blocks of time for one vehicle.
And staff want to address that before I open the public hearing?
Yes, I certainly can. Would be happy to. As Councilmember McNutt has pointed out, we do have a number of installations across the downtown area. In fact, we have one here at the Civic Center as well. And in all 4 of those locations, I believe we have the EV charging stations installed in areas of parking lots or on streets that almost all have completely different time parking restrictions, regardless of whether or not there is an EV charging station there. So to focus on the installations in parking lots 3 and 5, which are where we have our two double outlet stations, the parking lot 3 installation is along the backside, the farthest east strip of parking lot 3, in an area that up to this point has been unrestricted time parking. That is really the side of parking lot 3 where we encourage downtown employees to park because it's not timed. And so we've got, in the absence of any restrictions that we post, you've essentially got unlimited parking at the dual outlet station there. Conversely, the double outlet station in parking lot 5 is in the midst of the parking lot, if you will, and so it is subject to the same hourly restrictions as the rest of that lot, which all of a sudden it's escaping me whether it's 2 or 3 hours. So in the original staff report, what we had said is that we would recommend that the time limits remain consistent with other parking in the area. So the intent was not to create a third tier or a third time cycle, because essentially in the downtown area you've got the timed parking and you've got unlimited parking. We did not want to create a third category, so our intent was to be consistent with the time restrictions that already exist in these parking lots. So to cut to the heart of the matter, we very likely would not change the timing in lot 5, but in lot 3 we would prefer to make the 2 EV charging spots consistent with other timed stalls in the same lot. So it would be in the 3-hour range. Your question in the desk item was how long does it take to fully charge a car, and that can range from 1.5 to 6 hours depending on a variety of factors. So we would not be proposing changing the timing to allow a completely dead battery to be recharged completely. It is more along the lines of enough of a charge to get you where you need to go.
Ms. McNutt?
Thank you. That's helpful. Where I was getting confused is, it says the average length in town is 3.5 hours, and knowing that some of these spaces, like right over here, is 90 minutes, 2 hours, so it seemed like they were going longer. And with staff asking for authorization as a second part of this agenda item to change it going forward up to, I forget what it was saying, of 3 or 4 hours, just cause for some concern.
Let me follow up because, quite frankly, Mr. Caperso, I was losing you a little bit there. I understood that this was to make the EV parking spaces EV exclusive. Am I misconstruing you?
You are not. That is the primary intent. However, as a secondary part of that, so you're right, and I apologize for not pointing that out initially. The intent of this is to make these 6 charging stalls that are associated with the 6 charging outlets EV parking only. The issue that we're trying to also address, if possible, is unless otherwise posted, a couple of these stalls are still have unlimited time restrictions. So we're trying to bring kind of that turnover factor that we're trying to address into the. We didn't call out anything specific as of yet because we still are evaluating what is the average time of the session versus what is the time allowed in the rest of the lot. And frankly, to go back to the other concern, some of those time restrictions change over the course of the day. So the parking lot at the library, for example, is 90-minute parking, but only during the business day. At nighttime, it is essentially unlimited. So we found that the average time of a session, charging session here in Los Gatos has been about 3.5 to 3.75 hours. But you're absolutely correct. The main intention here is to make these EV parking only and then apply a time restriction where appropriate.
Thank you. Other questions of staff? Ms. Jensen.
So if the council was so inclined, why couldn't it direct that the spaces now not restricted for EV parking that are near an EV charging station simply be labeled EV parking only, such that all existing time limits or not time limits apply to them as they would to anybody else using that parking space?
That's certainly an option, but if we post for EV parking only, the intention of doing that is to keep the charging stations available for charging. So if you allow any vehicle, whether it's EV or non-EV, to park in a space for an unlimited amount of time, you're not really accomplishing what the intention of having charging stations are. So if we have unlimited parking in lot 3 in 2 stalls and we say these are for EVs only and it takes 3 hours to charge but the car parks there for 12 hours, we really haven't accomplished the availability of the charging that we're trying to accomplish.
Ms. Jensen?
Let me give you an alternate argument and see what your comment is. If you make the assumption that what you're doing is providing parking spaces and that some parking spaces happen to be next to an outlet that allows you to charge your vehicle, why then we're actually not, if we allow the same time restrictions, we're not doing anything except actually restricting parking. And what I hear you suggesting is that really what we want to have is a gas station. So do we want to have a parking space where, incidentally, you can use it as a gas station? Or do we want to have a gas station? And when I say gas station, I mean something that makes your car go. So to me, it's, okay, we have these parking spaces. We haven't restricted them. Now we're going to restrict them. While you're there, it is as an extra added bonus. You could charge your car. But why do we want to put another level on where we turn that into essentially a fueling station?
Mr. Caperso?
Well, I think we're already there. I think we are in the fueling station business to some extent already by the installation of the 4 stations. And So I guess the other way to look at it is that if you have them, how do you make them available? Because we did make, we did get the stations acquired and installed for a very low amount of money, but it nevertheless was an investment of public dollars, and we went down the path of choosing to install that infrastructure in our downtown parking inventory and making it available. So with the exception of parking lot 3, if I take parking lot 3 off the table, I would say that we already have that same scenario in parking lot 5 and in the library lot and even adjacent to the south side lot, because those areas already have a certain parking restriction that varies from 2 to 3 hours to 90 minutes here in the library certain times a day. So that turnover is already built in. So essentially what we did in lot 3 was to pick 2 stalls that happened to be the most convenient for the installation purpose, and those have no timing restrictions at all. So really what we're getting at is, should we apply a uniform policy to all charging stations, or should we choose to let them have the parking restrictions that the next adjacent ones have? It can go either way. I think we were simply trying to facilitate their availability and usage.
Mr. Capurso, what I hear you, I'm sorry, Ms. Jensen, I'm stepping on you. All right. Mr. Capurso, what I hear you saying is that the space can be EV exclusive with no time parameters. It can be EV exclusive with some time parameter. That time parameter can be consistent with the parking lot in which it is located, or maybe not. All right, thank you. Mr. Brzezinski.
Yeah, to follow up on Councilwoman Jensen's comments, we did not restrict those spaces to non-electric vehicles, on the premise that we wanted to make full use of a limited resource, and that is the number of spaces we have available in the downtown. We're at this point questioning whether we want to move beyond that, because we notice there's an increase in the number of vehicles that are on our streets now that are electric vehicles, and also because we've had an increase in usage. My sense, I do believe this is what Councilmember Jensen was getting to, is that we have different parking times based on locations, so that the east perimeter of lot 3 is unrestricted to encourage probably employees to park there away from the fronts of their businesses and towards the back of that lot. My assumption is that you could have an employee with an electric vehicle who would be interested in taking one of those spaces. That would allow them the same privilege as the others who park in that unrestricted zone for the day. When you're looking at lot 5, that's a 3-hour limit, and it concludes at 6 o'clock, I think. And in that regard, it would seem to me that a 3-hour charge should be sufficient to do what we think we're doing, which is allowing vehicles who come into town who need a quick charge, in effect, to have that if that space is available. But to go beyond that seems to me to be more a privileged position. We're granting more opportunity for a longer stay than we are granting to the rest of the individuals who use that lot. And the 90 minutes in the library lot for the working day, and that's, again, for purposes of moving the vehicles. So I know we have public comment, I'm sure, and we're not at the point to make recommendations, but I would like us to consider the issue of privilege as we assign these times, and be very cautious about giving privilege in an area that's already designated for a set timepiece.
Mr. Larson, did you want to respond to that before I go back to the council?
Yes, please.
All right, please.
Just to clarify, and I think it is following on what the councilman said, the staff recommendation, as noted on the top of page 3 in the first paragraph, is that for these 6 EV-only spaces, and they would be strictly limited to electric vehicles with this recommendation, they would inherit the adjacent time limits that currently exist. So where it's an unlimited parking, either after hours or all the time, those spots would inherit those time limits. Same here at the library and same in all 6 locations. However, staff was also asking for the discretion to vary those limits if and when demand so warrants. Otherwise, we would come back to you for a public discussion on whether or not to change those time limits at some point in the future. You also did receive public comment on this issue, and we gave you that alternative in the desk item.
We do have public comment, but does anybody else have questions of staff? Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. It seems to me, and you know, obviously we want to hear what the public has to say, but to have consistency throughout the policy, if we have 90 minutes here and unlimited here, it should be more along the lines of 3 hours or 3.5 hours for all these things, so they're easier to monitor and regulate. And if you put a time frame out in, I guess it was Lot 4, which has the unlimited time now of 3.5 hours, those will turn over quicker. If the library is, say, 3.5 hours, that's longer than the 90-minute turnover. However, there'll be, between the community that uses these vehicles, they have applications and things that search these things out, so people will be moving around more, and they'll be able to use them more like a network as opposed to trying to understand all the idiosyncrasies of our parking times and such. So that's my comment.
Thank you. And I would ask the counselor at this point just questions of staff so I can get into the public comment. Ms. McNutt. All right, no more questions to staff at this juncture. If you intend to speak to us on this agenda item, please submit one of these cards. I do have a couple of cards, and the first one is Dennis McAvoy.
Good evening. My name's Dennis McAvoy. I'm a resident of Los Gatos for 32 years. Our family owns 2 electric vehicles, and the oldest one we've had for about 15 months, so we have some experience in charging and in what other communities are doing in this regard. And I applaud the council for taking this step to put restrictions in, because I've noticed many times that the charging stations in Los Gatos are occupied by internal combustion engine cars, and as a result, visiting electric vehicles are not able to use the charging infrastructure that the council has authorized and put into place. But I would suggest that you actually need to go a step farther, as most other communities have done, and put the restriction that it is for electric vehicles while charging. And the reason is that there are a lot of electric vehicles in Los Gatos. And if you don't put the restriction that you must be charging, you'll be creating a privileged parking space or privileged parking spaces for the Los Gatos citizens like me who own electric vehicles. And I'd love to have that, but if you own an electric vehicle in Los Gatos, you do your charging at home. And so you don't really need to charge your car typically in a Los Gatos charging station. In fact, it's more expensive to do that. So if you go like Redwood City and San Francisco and the other communities and put a restriction that it is while charging, that will keep Los Gatos residents from hogging those spaces and allow the Nissan Leaf owners who are coming from San Francisco and need a charge in Los Gatos to get access to those stations. When parking's really tight, I probably would be willing to spend $2.50 to get that last parking space and plug my EV in. But I think most of the time, if you can go this step farther, that you'll accomplish what which I hope is what the council wants to do, which is to encourage visitors to Los Gatos to be able to use their electric vehicles, to come to Los Gatos, to shop, to eat, to go to the movies, and then charge while they're doing that, pay $2.50 or whatever the fee is, and then be able to return to wherever they came from. Thank you.
Questions for Mr. McAvoy? I do not have any. Thank you, sir. Mike Calise?
Hello, Mayor, Council, staff. Good to see you again. My name is Mike Calise. I'm a resident of Los Gatos for 15 years, although my wife says it's 16. I'm not quite sure. I'm here on behalf of myself, and I want to be clear that I have no business vested interest in the outcome here, although I am in the electric vehicle business, as most of you know. So I think it's a great situation that's happening now that we're moving to the next step, which is a step that has been vital. The reality is Los Gatos is actually getting a bad name, and that was never the intent of putting in the electric vehicle chargers. There's an application called PlugShare, and if you guys are unaware of this, this is about 120,000 people visit this app, and they see that Los Gatos has done it wrong. They see that most of the Bay Area has done it right. And so I'll give you some numbers. In 2010, we had about 2,000 EVs in North America. In 2011, about 17,000. In 2012, 53,000. And to date, we have 53,000 in 2013. We're expected to go to 95,000 in 2013, 140,000 in 2014, 250,000 plus in 2015. Aggregated, we'll have 1 million vehicles. Most of those vehicles are in California, about 20% adoption across the United States. Of that, split between the Bay Area and LA and San Diego. What we're faced with here is a tremendous growth in EV adoption. And it's important that the community of Los Gatos becomes EV ready ahead of the adoption. What we found is our adoption is increasing, even when we're getting iced with gas-powered vehicles sharing this. The great opportunity for Los Gatos here is to change the direction it has taken in the past, which has been fantastic and it's working, but it will no longer scale, and change to a restricted use of EV only at a minimum. I also believe that you should change this to EV with charging, so that EVers don't take a special privilege and it's fair to the community, and I agree with Mr. McAvoy's assessment. Moving forward, there's great opportunities for community awareness. We've not done that in the town of Los Gatos. We can educate Chamber of Commerce about opportunities for more business. There's an app I saw last week. It's called Green Cuisine. A restaurant owner gets together with an EV charger, gives a special voucher. That person can drive in from Sunnyvale and spend a lot of money in the restaurants. This is happening. So we should embrace this, make these for, at a minimum, EVs. The next step should be immediately EVs charging, and there's great opportunities to educate the community with awareness, both for the Chamber of Commerce as well as the community. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Mekachuk.
Hi, my name is Brian Mekachuk, and I live at 55 Roberts Road in Los Gatos Unit D. Our family has 2 electric vehicles. We have a Tesla, and we also have a Nissan Leaf. And I've charged both of those here in Los Gatos. I think that we're in a difficult position because the whole world is changing with respect to electric vehicles. And I have to commend staff and council for taking the initiative to move this forward. And I think that council should give staff the flexibility to allow the policy to evolve. I echo the 2 speakers in front of me with respect to having the parking restricted while charging. And the chargers that Los Gatos has have the functionality to be able to limit the charging for a defined period of time. And you can see whether a vehicle is charging or not when it's plugged in. They've got lights that are flashing on them. So you can enforce that. So if I plug in my vehicle and it goes for 4 hours, but the charging functionality is set only for 3 hours, my car will blink for 3 hours, then it stops charging, even if it's plugged in. So it's relatively easy to enforce. I've got a couple of examples of signs here from other municipalities that show it's for charging parking is restricted for electric vehicles when charging. The other thing is that in the various parking lots that we've got chargers, there's the ability to have multiple spots charging, accessing the charging station cords. And I don't think that all the spots have to be dedicated at the same time. I think staff should have the flexibility to monitor the usage, and as the usage increases, add one spot that's dedicated, add another one, without saying tonight, here, you either have to do this or this. And in parking lot 5, for example, there's 4 spots plus a handicap spot that can use the charging cords. And I've tried to use that spot multiple times, and it's always full. I also received the statistics through staff relating to the use of chargers here in Los Gatos, and the usage more than doubled, it almost doubled in the month of April versus January and February. So the good thing is the usage is going up, and those spots are being used. And I can give these to staff.
Thank you. I have no more cards on agenda item 4. So I will now close the public testimony portion of this hearing and look to the council for questions or motion. Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. So when I started all this, and I'm glad we did because it turned into a really good conversation. My interpretation when I read the staff report and in answer to the questions was that there was an interest of moving a 90-minute parking space to a 3, 4, 5, 6-hour parking space, and that's what I was uncomfortable with. What I have heard staff say was their intention was actually the opposite, to take an unlimited parking space, stop me if I'm wrong, take the unlimited parking space and bring it down to 3-hour so that we would have that turnover. With that clarification and with the good advice from the public that we just heard, I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve agenda item number 4 with the addition that we look at the signage being reserved while charging for EVs, electric vehicles while charging.
Second.
All right, we have a motion by Ms. McNutt, seconded by Mr. Brzezinski, authorizing restricted parking and parking stalls in electric vehicle charging stations with the additor that the signage would say when charging. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously. And while those speakers are leaving, I should say that all of the there were a number of items that were approved on our consent calendar and for which we will not be having testimony this evening. And one of them was agenda item 8, which is pavement rehabilitation, including Oka Road. So that matter has been approved, and there will be no more there will not be any testimony on it. All right, we are now on agenda item 5. Santa Clara Valley Water District grant application, and it's to adopt a resolution authorizing the town manager to apply for and accept grant funds. And so, first of all, I will turn to Ms. McNutt, who pulled the item, and ask her why.
Thank you, Mayor. This is another one where I was just, I had some questions, and I was uncomfortable with the idea of the town applying for a grant for a project that has not gone through the public process of discussion, considering the last time we brought up a similar subject, there was quite a bit of public interest in it. So I was asking in my questions, did we have to apply for this now? What exactly does it mean? So I still need that reassurance and I'd like to hear what other council members have to say, whether anyone else is bothered by that.
Staff will be addressing that? I bet you it's Mr. Capurso.
It is.
Thank you.
It's Public Works Week, after all. That is an excellent question. This is one of those situations that actually is not unlike our first grant application that we did for the initial location that was proposed for the sports park. I'm speaking of the pedestrian bridge. So sometimes in grants and trails, you can't always align the grant opportunity with the public process and the environmental review in the sequence that you would like. And we learned that lesson with our initial grant application when we attempted to construct the pedestrian bridge as part of the sports park project. And so we successfully applied for grant funding with the Santa Clara Valley Water District for a grant in the amount of approximately $300,000 that would have connected the sports park to the Los Gatos Creek Trail at a location about midway. It's located about midway in the sports park. During the community process, we found that there were several concerns expressed about that location, so we decided to not pursue the installation of a bridge at that location, and definitely not at that time. So we had actually evaluated 2 other locations as part of the initial assessment, and those 2 alternate locations are in very close proximity to the Vasona Dam. And the reason that those other 2 alignments were considered is that they would provide the opportunity to provide access not only to the sports park, but they could also enhance the accessibility to both Vasona County Park. They could take bicycles and pedestrians off of University Avenue a little bit quicker, if you will, without having to force people to go up to Lark if you're headed northbound, or up to Blossom Hill if you're headed southbound. And so we began our discussions with both the County of Santa Clara and the Santa Clara Valley Water District within the last few months with regard to those alternate alignments. Put that thought on hold for a second. We then came to the council in January and had a CIP study session to go over some potential projects for what we would build into the 5-year capital program. And although the pedestrian bridge connection certainly didn't come out as the #1 priority out of that discussion, it was my sense that there was still council interest in evaluating that as a future project. So we then returned to our discussions with both the Water District and county parks, and as we look at either of the 2 other alignments that make the most sense, they would both cross the creek at a location which is just about at the southern edge of the sports park. So if you're going to cross the creek at that location to provide access to the sports park, but then begin to address the other accessibility issues, that how would you provide for both pedestrian and bicycle access to University, you've actually got to build another segment of trail, which would go from the creek channel up the face of the Vasona Dam up to where the maintenance gate is up at University Avenue. And so it was actually a suggestion from the Water District that, oh gee, we've got another grant cycle open right now. You've already successfully applied for a grant to construct the bridge. You may want to consider applying for another grant that would actually create the trail link from the creek channel up to University Avenue. And so that's what we've done, and now we're asking for your concurrence. We can certainly pull back the grant application anytime if this is not something that council would like us to do. But in short, we saw that as a wonderful financial opportunity. We've taken the opportunity, but we have not made any sort of commitment. And I should also add that if we proceed, that when we come back to you on at the end of May with the proposed 5-year CIP, you will see a project in there where we will propose constructing that bridge, and any bridge project and any alignment will need to have its own environmental review and its own community input process.
Ms. McNutt, further questions?
No, just a comment that I'm not opposed to the bridge trail idea. I certainly am not opposed to getting money from somebody else to help pay for anything. My concern is, as always, we get ourselves in these predicaments where things get a little bit out of step in terms of public conversation, and then when it does come to the public, then it's like, well, the town has already made a decision, I didn't know about it, and we've heard these kinds of refrains before. So I was just trying to figure out if this was the necessary way of scheduling this to prevent yet another special meeting at some point in the future.
I have one left this year. Mr. Capurso, what I hear you saying is that there was a reason that you're applying for the grant now, but it doesn't commit the town to any specific project.
That is absolutely correct. And that I should also add that that is true of the first grant that we successfully applied for. So in the initial grant agreement where we successfully applied for money to build the bridge, that we still haven't built yet, there's no commitment. If we ever decide not to build that bridge, we would have up until the length of the grant agreement to say, well, we're not going to take advantage of that grant. So applying and even successfully, I won't say receiving, but tentatively receiving those funds does not commit you to construct the project.
Further questions? Mr. Vice Mayor.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. Regarding what Mr. Capurso just said, so it sounds like there is a possible expiration date on the grant. Is that correct?
That is correct. Our initial grant application, and I'm keep going back to that first one, has an expiration date of 2015.
Okay.
And this second grant that we are now applying for actually has a date, I want to say 2016. But in our conversations with the Water District, if we can successfully combine this into one trail segment project, they've already given us the indication that we could go back and renegotiate the first one, combine it with the second one, and it would essentially become one single project and one single grant agreement, if we get to that point.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
So a follow-up question. I believe the amount of the first grant was $250,000. Is that correct?
It's probably in the high. It's right around. It's almost $300,000.
Okay. And this additional grant would be an additional $300,000 for a total of almost $600,000. Is that correct?
You are correct.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Jensen.
My question was similar to Councilwoman McNutt's, but I'm just going to give you my understanding and ask you a follow-up question. I was concerned that we were being asked to retroactively approve something that had been done, that the town had applied for a grant. We could apply based upon getting the town council approval. So we're really retroactively kind of stamping something that already happened. So I was a little concerned about that and wanted to know why we did that, but I think you sort of explained that. And my next question is just how the grant process works. Am I to understand that unless and until the town actually pulls permits or does whatever and approves a particular project for which it has received funds or has received a commitment to get funds, that it doesn't get funds such that the town is not going to be in the position of sending money back if a project doesn't happen?
That's exactly right. There's no real exchange of money until we would construct the project, and this grant, like most other grants, are done on a reimbursable basis. So we wouldn't construct a project not without having a grant agreement in place, but yet if we don't construct the project, we're not sending money back to anybody because they never came our way to begin with.
Mr. Brzezinski.
Thank you. Just to clarify, so this combination of grants, Mr. Capurso, actually buys us the bridge and the trail and the connection to university?
Not quite, and I need to go back and correct something that in my answer to the Vice Mayor. I'm going to go back to this Phase 1 project that I keep referring to. That project was defined as being a roughly $600,000 project, and we had committed $300,000 of that and I use the term committed loosely because it's in it's the remainder of the sports park budget, and we use that as a match to apply for the other 300 that we have already been approved for. The second segment of this is another $300,000 project, but the grant we're applying for $150,000. So that would bring $450,000 of Water District money to the table. We have not yet identified our match for that portion, and that would be dependent on the actual scope of the project, environmental review, and where we stand with our capital program going into 13-14. We do have funds that we can allocate toward that, and we had a discussion with council back in January about what some of the potential uses of our park funds and other capital funds would be. So we haven't dialed that one in yet. So in essence, we've told the Water District that if we are funded, the town would have to fund essentially another $150,000, because that's the grant application it's basically a 50-50. So we'd have essentially a $900,000 project that $450,000 of the total would come to us from the two grants.
Okay. If I might.
Yes, Mr. Brzezinski.
But we may come to the conclusion that a $900,000 bridge over the dam isn't exactly what we want to spend our money on. And so if we come to that conclusion after we have started the process, then are we at any risk of loss of town funds?
The only potential for loss would be the initial investments that we would do in terms of staff resources to talk to the community, and if we perform any level of environmental review, which we would probably be on our dime. And so if we get to the point where either the council decides not to fund the project, in which case we wouldn't do either of those two steps, but that's performing those two steps would be the highest level of risk that we would have. So in essence, we'd hold at least one, possibly several community meetings and do some lower level of environmental review. And I'm not talking a full environmental assessment, but at that point is when we would have to, that would probably be our decision point. It would be before we spent any real money in terms of engineering or design. It would be more of a function of, is this alignment something the community wants, and is it environmentally feasible? So that would be our only risk.
All right, yeah, I appreciate that. And have you established a time frame within which we might optimally be able to do what we're saying with this project, ballpark?
Yes, we would very likely do the preliminary portions of this project, as I just described, very likely toward the end of next fiscal year, 13-14, and then if successful, we would carry the construction into the following fiscal year.
Thank you.
Other council questions? Seeing none, I do not have any cards on this, but is there any member of the public who would like to address us on Agenda Item 5, the Santa Clara Valley Water District grant application? Seeing no one coming forward, I'll close the public input portion of the hearing and look to the council for a motion. Ms. McNutt.
Thank you, Mayor. With all the questions and the vibrant discussion that we had, I'm comfortable going ahead and moving approval of Agenda Item 5.
We have a motion, a second, discussion. Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Passes unanimously.
And Madam Mayor, I just wanted to suggest that when we bring the budget forward to you in May in the staff report that comes out the Thursday prior to the meeting, we'll have a discussion in there of the multiple grant and town sources for the bridge and the path, just so you see how that all fits into the CIP.
That'd be helpful. Thank you. All right, we have another agenda item that has been pulled from the consent calendar. It's Agenda Item 7, Chestnut Avenue Temporary Installation Traffic Calming Devices. That has been pulled by Lee Quintana. Ms. Quintana, I will ask you to come up here and tell us the basis for pulling this item.
Lee Quintana, 5 Palm Avenue. The reason I pulled this item is I'd like some clarification on several points. looks like I lost my notes already. Oh, well. It's more than a couple of years ago. A while back, an issue on Hernandez Avenue, traffic calming came up. And at that time, it was my understanding that the discussion was that if there were traffic calming to be done in that area, that it had to take into account the effect on the entire area and the parallel streets. So that's a comment. My questions are, this says Chestnut Avenue area traffic calming. What is the Chestnut area neighborhood? Because I live just 2 blocks from it, and I was not notified of any meetings regarding this, nor were any of the neighbors that I talked to. And the second clarification that I'd like is exactly where the calming measure is going in. And I then add a comment that without having surveyed the existing traffic in the surrounding area, how will you be able to know at the end of a year that it hasn't shifted traffic from one street to another street? And does it need to have an area-wide measure?
Thank you. I don't have any other cards on this item. Does anyone wish to address us? Seeing no one coming forward, I'll close the public input portion of this hearing. Turn to staff to see if there's anything that you need to add or would like to add.
Yes, certainly would be happy to. For traffic calming projects, we refer to the town's traffic calming policy. And in the policy, there is certainly a statement that says that all affected streets will be evaluated. And it doesn't tell you specifically what that means. But in our experience, what we have found is that installation of speed humps and stop signs do not divert traffic. They slow traffic down. They basically do what we intend for them to do. But when we consider other options that may divert traffic, we certainly expand the definition of an expanded area. So over the last several years, we've done a number of traffic calming projects. We do 2 to 3 per year. And once we know that the street segment qualifies, we then pull together the immediate neighborhood. And the immediate neighborhood is usually initially identified as the segment of street, all residents that live on the segment of street that brought the petition forward. And if we find that the issues, if it's a speeding issue, not necessarily a volume issue, but a speeding issue, can be addressed with something like a speed hump, we would not expand our area that we would notice invite to a public forum. Several years ago, some of you may recall that we had a traffic calming project in the Bellwood Gateway area, and for some of the potential improvements being proposed by some members in the community, things like traffic diverters and other measures like that where traffic would necessarily have to go to an adjacent street, we did expand the area. But that's atypical for traffic calming. So when the measures being created or being proposed are along the lines of a stop sign and a speed hump, it is not our experience that traffic gets diverted. Now, further along that point is when we do the initial installation of traffic calming devices, they are considered temporary. At the first time they come to council, if you approve them tonight, they are installed on what we would call a temporary basis. And in a period of 6 months to a year, staff goes back out to the neighborhood and resurveys the volumes on the street and the average speeds on the street, and we look for changes. So what we hope to find is that the volumes will stay approximately the same and the speed will be reduced such that the 85th percentile is now complying with the local speed limit. And we don't come back to council and ask you to make those changes permanent until we have done that survey and have confirmed that.
Thank you. Questions of staff? Mr. Leonardis.
Thank you, Mayor Spector. Just so the public understands this process. When you do go back out and conduct a survey, how is that done?
It's mainly done by what you would call hose counts. So we'll go back out with the traffic hoses and capture, and what the traffic hoses do is they capture the volumes and the speeds. And then we will follow it up with some empirical analysis by both the traffic engineer and the traffic sergeant from PD.
Thank you.
Further questions? All right, may I have a motion?
Move the staff recommendation.
I have a motion, I have a second.
I'll second.
Seconded by the Vice Mayor. Discussion? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Now we're on to the next item that has been pulled from the consent calendar, which is Agenda Item 9, Landscape and Lighting Assessment Districts 1 and 2. That has been pulled from the consent calendar by Ally Stern. Ms. Stern, would you please come forward and tell us what your reason is for pulling this from the consent calendar?
Okay, I hope that I've done the correct thing by pulling it, because I really came here tonight to tell you that PG&E, the substation that was installed some years ago, has been neglected to live up to their stipulation and promise that after they installed the substation, they would put in trees, tall trees that would hide the installation from the street. So I would like to invite each council member to drive down Lark Avenue slowly westward to Winchester, look at the substation as you're driving down Lark Avenue, make a right at Winchester Boulevard, and turn left at Wilmington, the next light, and go down Wilmington for a block or so, make a U-turn and come up Wilmington and look at the substation from Wilmington and Wimbledon and Winchester. Make a left at Winchester, take a look at the substation driving down Winchester, and see they have not lived up to their bargain. You see the substation. I was in the original committee trying to stop the substation coming in, but PG&E is very clever. They know how to get their way when they want it, and that's what the stipulation became. So forgive me if I put this in the wrong place, but it was a member of landscaping. It's not the town's responsibility to landscape it. It is PG&E's responsibility to put in the landscaping, and I would like someone to police this and make sure that they are living up to their bargain.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I have no other cards. Does anyone else want to address us on Agenda Item 9? Seeing no one coming forward, this concludes the public testimony portion of this hearing, and I will look to staff to see if they have anything they want to add.
It appears that the inquiry is not directly related to the immediate action before you, but staff will follow up with Ms. Stern and visit the substation, and if appropriate, have a follow-up discussion with PG&E. So, Ms. Stern, if I could ask you to meet with Assistant Town Manager Pamela Jacobs in the lobby to get your contact information. Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions of staff? Seeing none, Mr. Brzezinski?
I'll move the recommended action.
Mr. Vice Mayor?
Second.
We have a motion by Mr. Brzezinski, seconded by Mr. Leonardis. Discussion, hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Passes unanimously. We are now, actually, we're not, we have finished the consent calendar. We are now at verbal communications. Again, if anyone wants to address us on verbal communications, please submit a card. I have two. The first one, I'm going to guess that it's Judy Katie, but it could be Katie Judy. All right. See no one coming forward. And then Judy Ryan. Seeing no one coming forward, what I think has happened is that both of these individuals wanted to speak on, they said verbal communications, but I think they wanted to speak on Agenda Item 8, Oka Road, and they just put the wrong notation. But we are on verbal communications, so does anyone want to address us on verbal communications? Seeing no one coming forward, we are now at public hearings. Agenda Item 11, which has to do with 50 University Avenue. Since I own property near this property, I'm going to be recusing myself and turning over the chair of this rest of this meeting to the Vice Mayor.
So as previously stated, we will be opening this is for item number 11. It's a conditional use permit appeal of a planning commission decision which denied the approval of a Formula Retail store, Lucy, in a commercial space previously occupied by a Formula Retail bookstore, Borders, on property zoned C2 LHPDP. So do we have a staff report?
Yes, Vice Mayor. Erwin Ordonez, Senior Planner. The applicant is asking Council to grant an appeal of the Planning Commission action to deny a request for conditional use permit, as you've noted, to allow a women's athletic apparel Formula Retail store in a portion of the vacant Borders bookstore in Old Town. Since November 2002, the town has required a conditional use permit for Formula Retail uses with 7 or more locations. The Lucy retail store is proposing to occupy approximately 2,200 square feet of the ground floor of the former bookstore that was also considered as Formula Retail use. No exterior changes are proposed except for signs, which will be consistent with the sign program for Old Town. The applicant is proposing hours of operation and delivery that are consistent with the other businesses in the center. On March 27th, the Planning Commission heard the appellant's application for the conditional use permit and deadlocked 2-2, with 2 recusals and 1 member absent. As a result of the deadlock, the conditional use permit application was denied for lack of votes for approval. The issues for the Commission with the application were the lack or were the overconcentration of Formula Retail in Old Town and the lack of retail diversity since the majority of tenants are women's apparel related. The basis of the appellant's appeal is that the Commission erred or abused its discretion because its action resulted in a non-decision to approve or deny due to the tied vote, and that the public comment period during the hearing may have been closed prematurely because the Commission's concerns were only raised after the comment period was closed by the chair. Staff's recommendation is to uphold the Planning Commission's action, make the required findings for denial of the conditional use permit in Attachment 1, and to adopt the resolution denying the appeal of the Planning Commission's denial in Attachment 3. If Council desires to grant the appeal, staff recommends that Council make the required findings for granting the appeal and the required findings for approval of a conditional use permit in Attachment 1, and to adopt the resolution granting the appeal and approving the conditional use permit in Attachment 2. This concludes staff's presentation, and I am available for questions.
Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Ordonez. My question goes to staff's interpretation of whether or not the 2-2 vote is actually not an action, as you just gave us in the summary.
In terms of the town's process, our understanding is that there was a lack of votes for a majority for approval, and under the Commission's rules, that would constitute a denial.
Any other questions of staff? Seeing none, we'll open the public hearing. The applicant has 10 minutes to speak and a 5-minute rebuttal. The public has 3 minutes to speak. If you wish to speak as a member of the public, please submit a comment card. I don't know if we have some sitting over there in Mayor Spector's pile. come forward, please.
So, good evening, Vice Mayor and Council. My name is Mark Bryden, and I'm the president of Lucy Activewear. And along with Dawn Desi and Brian Learn, as well as our partners from Federal Realty, glad to have this chance to speak to the council tonight. Lucy's a premium women's activewear company based across the bay in Alameda, California. And we're here to really speak to the council about and ask the council to consider our appeal for the denial of the conditional use permit. And our hope is to be able to bring the Lucy brand to life in the Los Gatos Town Center following this conversation. Our internal culture reflects the purpose, and our products are designed and produced by a team of people, mostly women, who live a fit and active life. We're the premium women's activewear brand, and our purpose is to encourage and engage with consumers who celebrate a fit and healthy life. We're a small company and own and operate 57 retail stores with an even mix of street front, town center, and mall locations. We also operate our e-commerce site and are beginning to forge relationships with premium sporting goods and department store wholesalers as well. But we remain a small specialty retailer focused on servicing the needs of active women. Over the past 12 months, we've spent a lot of time examining our brand and defining very, very clearly what we stand for. And as part of that work, we've confirmed that our brand DNA is firmly rooted in Northern California. We're based here. We opened our first brick-and-mortar store here on Burlingame Avenue in 2001, and we'll be here for a long time into the future. Far from being a formula retailer with little relevance to Los Gatos community, Lucy's brand identity is formed around Northern California, which is our provenance and our place, the place from which we come. Our design muse is a woman in her 30s who we have stated lives in the community resembling Los Gatos, a place with the warmth and approachability of a small community, and with the energy and sophistication of a vibrant town. This provenance informs everything we do, from how we approach product design to what we want our stores to look like, to how we interact with our community. We chose Los Gatos as the first location in Northern California to represent our new store design, which we're bringing to life, inspired by our muse's Northern California home, a space with character and charm that is also pulsing with a modern energy. This new store design is a huge deal for us and represents about a $400,000 build-out, an investment, and we plan to work with the local construction teams to bring the design to life. The store will bring in about $90K in sales tax revenue annually into the community, and we think it will be an inviting and warm space for women to come and shop and to connect with others who share their love of the active life. Our marketing efforts are centered on the relationships our store staff establishes with local gyms and studios and fitness professionals who also serve the needs of these active women. We have a consumer program we call Play Where We Play, where Lucy associates engage with these local gyms, studios to bring special offers or programs to the Lucy consumer while creating exposure in our stores. And we found that these relationships benefit all. The Lucy customer has information about what's being offered in the community, and she has special opportunities to try out new workouts with the gyms and studios around which she's associated. So we think these reciprocal relationships are at the heart of our marketing strategy and reflect the importance we place on engaging with our communities and with our customers to share the love of leading active lives. And so we're excited and ready to move forward with the Los Gatos opportunity and ask that the Town Council would affirm the decisions and votes needed to allow this to come to life. Thank you.
Thank you. Next up is Don Sedsi. Did I pronounce that correctly?
Vice Mayor Leonardis, members of council,
members of the community. My name is Dawn Desi, and I'm the Director of Brand Marketing at Lucy Activewear. And I'd like to take this opportunity to just add a couple of points to Mr. Bryden's comments and just suggest that why Lucy is a good fit for the Los Gatos Downtown Center. Mark talked about how our brand is rooted in a place very much like Los Gatos, and I would add that our target customer is also a reflection of the Los Gatos resident. Basic demographics suggest that more than 71% of households in Los Gatos zip codes reflect our customer profile in basic things like age, household income, education level. But more importantly, in our consideration, is the way of life. Los Gatos boasts a very engaged citizen base that's highly participatory, and this is a key attribute of our consumer target. She's active, for one, because it keeps her healthy and fit, but also because it allows her to be more of herself, to have the energy to fully engage in life and fully participate with her family, friends, and community. We've done a considerable amount of work to try and understand our target customer and what she's looking for in an activewear brand. And we've consistently heard from our target customer that she's looking for a brand that she can trust and that shares her values, which is why I think Los Gatos and Lucy are a natural fit. We're not a brand that tells you what activity you should be doing or how well you should be doing it. We are a brand that invites you to engage with us and share the fit and active life that we love. And our stores promote a positive interaction among women about all kinds of activities according to each woman's passion and her ability. And our customer data tell us that there are a considerable number of Los Gatos residents that are driving to Santana Row to shop in our store there. And almost as many are also coming from the Santa Cruz area, bypassing Los Gatos and going to San Jose to shop in our stores. And we think these are desirable customers for the Los Gatos Town Center who we are currently serving in another town and we'd like to serve in Los Gatos.
Thank you. Next up is Jan Sweetnam. Jan.
Jan, yes.
Got it.
Good evening. My name is Jan Sweetnam. I'm the Western Region COO for Federal Realty, the owner of SRI Old Town and Old Town Center. Thank you for your time and consideration in this appeal tonight. I want to assure you that Old Town is an incredibly valuable and important asset to Federal Realty. We kind of refer to it as a crown jewel, a shining opportunity to deliver to the community. It's a real gem for us. We work hard to invest in it, to maintain it, to improve it in ways that are valuable to the community. Most recently, it's releasing the Borders box that we've been working on for really over 4 years now, and it's small things like redoing the patio so that it's more appealing and more user friendly for the community to use. All these things are important to what we do. Very valuable. We also relish the opportunity to preserve and partake in the history of the property, as well as at the same time serving the future needs and current needs of the community. We believe Old Town has a valuable collection of soft good retailers, and it's Banana Republic, it's Gap, it's Chico's. When we go down a list, and they are all national retailers, and all of them, many of them, and it's important for them to they value being together, but that's not really what makes it really valuable. What makes this collection of soft good retailers valuable is that they serve the Los Gatos community. In every case, the majority or even supermajority of their customers live in Los Gatos. Many of these, almost all of these retailers have been with us for many years, not because we signed 20 or 30-year leases with them, but they've renewed their leases. They've renewed their leases. They want to stay here because the Los Gatos community, the Los Gatos citizens value their product and shop their stores. And we think that's very important. It is a very important opportunity to keep the Los Gatos community shopping in downtown Los Gatos, not bypassing us and going to other opportunities to shop somewhere else. And when they come into Old Town and shop, they then have the opportunity to enjoy everything that downtown has to offer. We're terribly excited to bring Lucy in if we can. We think that they would be a great complement to our current set of retailers. And another really important reason, another great product that will bring Los Gatos into downtown. I will add that Mark's description of the customer fits my wife perfectly. Though she's no longer 30, she acts and feels like she does. And I shop there twice a year on Mother's Day and for her birthday. Federal Realty is incredibly privileged to serve Los Gatos. We love being part of the community, and we ask you for your vote for this appeal so that we can bring Lucy to our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you. So I'm all out of speaker cards. Does anybody else wish to speak on this item this evening? Seeing none, does the applicant want to come up and rebut anything that was said this evening? You have 5 minutes for a rebuttal. Seeing none, no one taking advantage of that opportunity, would the applicant like to come forward and answer questions from council? If we have any questions for them? None? No? Okay. So moving on to council discussion. We're going to officially close the public hearing and move on to council discussion. Councilmember Jensen.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. I wanted to just ask a question of staff, Mr. Ordonez. I was looking back at the Planning Commission report and also the report we got for this evening, and I don't actually see the formula retail ordinance, but everything in the report indicates that the formula retail ordinance obviously applies. So then I was looking at page, 2 of the staff report for the Planning Commission, which goes through findings that would be required to approve the conditional use permit, and they are in parentheses 2, 3, and 4 that regarding detracting from the existing balance and diversity, etc. And I, with my familiarity with the formula retail ordinance, I'm thinking that those are just extracted from the ordinance. Is that correct? Those findings? Because I know that the ordinance requires sort of negative findings. I'm looking at the Planning Commission report, staff report.
On,
I'm sorry, it's Exhibit 2, page 2.
oh, page 2, okay.
Required findings for 50 University Avenue. I was just looking for the findings for under the formula retail ordinance. So when I looked at findings on Exhibit 2 to the Planning Commission report, on page 2, I'm seeing paragraph 2, 3, and 4, and they're talking about a use that detracts from the existing balance and diversity of businesses in the commercial district, creating an overconcentration of similar types of businesses, detracting from the existing land use mix and high urban design standards. Have you found what I'm talking about? I think those track the language in the formula retail ordinance. I just want to make sure.
That's correct.
Okay, thanks. That's what I wanted to ask.
Thank you, Vice Mayor. This seems really straightforward to me. We've had these situations before where we've had a formula business leave and another formula come in. We keep a very close balance on formula versus independent. This is not upsetting that balance. It's a trade-off, 1 for 1. And I also, we've talked about this in the past also, that I do not feel that it is our role as a town to say there are too many women's clothing stores, too many yogurt shops. That's for the marketplace to decide. When we talk about diversity, we're talking about diversity of restaurants and versus retail, or personal service businesses versus financial institutions. So given that, as I said, I do believe that it is straightforward in terms of granting the appeal, and I would do it on the basis of not a mistake on the part of Planning Commission, since it was 2-2, was kind of a non-decision. But I do think that it's a policy decision in that we are interpreting potentially tonight for the Planning Commission and reaffirming to the community our feelings about maintaining that balance of formula and independent, and also clarifying what diversification means. And it doesn't mean trying to be a shopping center manager. So given that, I'm going to make a motion to grant the appeal. The required findings are in Attachment 1, and the conditional use permit is in Attachment 2, I believe, although I think it says 4 in there, but it's Attachment 2, correct?
There's findings in 1, and I believe the resolution is in 2.
In 2.
Yes.
Okay.
And with Attachment 4 with the conditions of approval.
Yes, thank you.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second?
Second.
Councilmember Jensen?
I'm going to be supporting the motion, and for my former colleagues on the Planning Commission, I want to explain a little bit why. It was an unusual decision in that many of the planning commissioners were forced to be recused based upon the location of the residence. So we really had a 2-2 split. Ironically, 2 men voted against it and 2 women voted for it. I thought that was interesting. The reason I was going through the painstaking process of asking about the Planning Commission staff report and the formula retail is that I think that we can make the findings that it is not detracting from a mix. It is replacing formula retail with formula retail, as Councilwoman McNutt pointed out. I also think in the pantheon of the discussion of, well, it's women's clothes, I'm familiar with the brand. There's women's clothes and there's women's clothes. This is a workout clothes, which is different than Chico's. It's different than whatever. So I don't think we're actually creating, and it's also different than Anthropologie. So we're not creating the same business over and over again. I actually think we are offering a more diverse product. So that's why I'm willing to make a policy decision different than what the Planning Commission did and explain my reasons why.
Councilmember Brzezinski.
I'm glad Councilwoman explained the 2-2 split based on gender. I too noticed that, and I thought also that that it was somewhat ostentatious, shall we say, on the part of the 2 members of the commission who voted in opposition to define what would be a good product there. One of the individuals indicated he'd only go across the street to California Cafe now, since there's no other place to go. At the same time, I absolutely agree with Councilmember Jensen's analysis of the ordinance language related to the diversification of our formula versus independent mix. We've been really good at maintaining that 80-20 split approximately, 80% given to independent. And that's why the downtown is so vibrant. That's why we have been able to sustain ourselves in contrast to so many of the downtown communities that have not been able to prevent wholesale inclusion of formula retail. That said, I also agree with Councilwoman McNutt's motion in that this is really a policy matter that rests with the council, not the commission. It was commented in the motion of the commission that that there were 4 meetings discussing the density of yogurt shops in the downtown. Actually, that's not accurate. There was 1 meeting. The council decided in 1 meeting that we had not put any prohibition on the number of yogurt shops, and the reason why that was raised at all is because there was a proposal for a yogurt shop on Elm Street and a yogurt shop on North Santa Cruz. In close proximity was the opposition. But the council decided that we're not making that judgment. We will make judgments on certain uses if they seem like they are impacting the real mix. We did that with personal service businesses. So that said, this really was not an issue I think that was that difficult to understand from the council's perspective, and so I will be also in agreement with the motion.
Thank you. Any other comments from council? We have a motion, we have a second. So I call the question. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? None. Passes unanimously. And that's it for us this evening. This meeting is adjourned.